So, here was the plan. Drive 6 hours from Scotland to Silverstone, film Le Mans Ultimate's new European Le Mans Series content, both the Silverstone track and the Ligier LMP3 car, and then drive 6 hours all the way back home again in the day. The only trouble is, well, you can hear for yourself.
We're here at Silverstone for the European Le Mans Series weekend, and it's much anticipated return to British soil. And I'm here to drive one of these. So I asked the team boss, unfortunately, they said no. However, Le Mans Ultimate is also here, and we get to try a new LMP3 car at Silverstone on the day for the very first time.
Yeah. I mean, the plan was solid and we thought we executed it pretty well, but an equipment failure had other ideas, meaning we only had camera audio, and we only discovered this once we got home, so I can only apologise. But we did really want you to see the new content first, and thankfully, we do have exclusive direct gameplay footage, so stay tuned. And we've tried our best to recover the audio, and obviously record this voiceover, so that you can still hear my first impressions.
The first thing you're going to notice as I roll out the pit lane is that it's actually the blue pit lane. So this is not the new wing building, the international layout, it's the national pit lane. Of course, is the full Silverstone GP circuit. So what do we know already about this content? Well, I'm driving one of 3 LMP3 cars that's going to be coming to Le Mans Ultimate as part of the rollout European Le Mans Series content. This is the Ligier JS P325, one of the Gen 3 LMP3 cars, new for this season with a twin-turbo V6 engine. We do already know what other ELMS content will be coming to the sim as part of this DLC rollout. There will be 2 other cars, the Duqueine D09 and the Ginetta G61 LT LMP3 Evo. Again, all of these cars are Gen 3 spec, which means you've got the new V6 engine. They're basically the same chassis with a few modifications from last year to accommodate the new, slightly smaller engine. They're all a little bit heavier as well, so lap times are pretty similar. But that's not all, because we will also get an upgraded LMP2 with basically less restrictions on it. In ELMS, the LMP2 spec is a little bit faster than those that have been running at Le Mans in recent years, and they're about 60 horsepower more, should be around 2 to 4 seconds a lap faster depending on the circuit. So that's going to be good fun. And then of course there are the circuits. So we're here at Silverstone. You actually get your first glimpse of some new buildings there on the right, because of course this is a very up-to-date version of Silverstone. And obviously the new circuits, there's maybe less to talk about now with new circuits. We all know Silverstone very well. The other 2 circuits being Ricard and Barcelona-Catalunya as well. But any new circuits to a game is always exciting, because even though we know these circuits very well, it just adds to the rotation. It means that basically we have more longevity with online races across different venues, and of course it means more layouts as well. At the moment we're just testing this first GP layout, and that's I'm sure what will be there at launch first time around, but you can expect, like in all circuits, more layouts to appear in the future. So we don't yet have an exact release date for this content, but we are expecting the first rollout at least to be this Ligier and Silverstone, and we're expecting it before the end of September, according to an earnings call from Motorsport Games, a statement from Stephen Hood a few months ago, I believe, who said the first rollout of ELMS content would be Q3 in 2025. Maybe we see the first pack with just this car and this track, maybe the next pack is a second circuit and a second of the LMP3 cars, or maybe the LMP2 for example. But of course we'll keep you updated as soon as we hear more about exact dates and what's going to be in each pack. Now I want to talk about the car first. LMP3 cars, they're somewhere between GT3 and LMP2 in terms of pace, which is perhaps unsurprising. They're actually a little bit closer to GT3 pace than they are to LMP2 pace in the ELMS series. Now the car's got a 3.5 litre twin-turbo V6 developed by Toyota, but these race engines are actually run and developed properly into race engines by Oreca. The original derivative of this engine can be found in stuff like the Toyota Tundra or the Land Cruiser, and some fancy Lexi as well. But this is a proper race engine, 470 horsepower, 15 more than the Gen 2 cars, but as I said earlier, they are a little bit heavier as well. It does mean, of course, a different soundtrack, and having heard these cars bellowing around the Silverstone circuit this weekend, and also having heard at Le Mans earlier in the year, the sound is authentic, it's real, as you would expect from Le Mans Ultimate. I've always been impressed with the sound design, and this is no different. I don't think the V6 is as exciting an engine as the V8 from previous cars. They were 5.6 litre Nissan V8s. But, having said that, it's about realism. It still sounds good, it sounds purposeful. What I'm intrigued about is how No, the twin-turbo V6 actually affects the characteristics of the driving experience because, of course, with the V8 naturally aspirated engine, you get power delivery in a natural way. With twin-turbo, it's a little bit more hit or miss. But it is pretty smooth, though. I don't think there's a massive difference in how this feels compared to the Gen 2 LMP3s with that V8 engine that I've driven on other sims. Because, yes, this is new to Le Mans Ultimate, and it is the first time we've seen a Gen 3 LMP3 car in a modern sim, but we have seen plenty of iterations of Gen 2 cars, the likes of the Ligier JS P325 on iRacing. That car also appeared in R Factor 2 along with a Norda, which was a Gen 1 LMP3 car. Even ELMS 2 has that Gen 2 Ligier as well, although it's a different spec because it's basically restricted for a Brazilian endurance series, so we can't really count that one. My initial impressions of the driving experience, though, are it feels similar to that I've experienced on iRacing and R Factor 2. I think it's compliment to LMU and the work they've done with the physics to make this more realistic, that this car doesn't quite let you get away with as much as you would on R Factor 2. On R Factor 2 you could drive it more aggressively, you could throw the car into the corners and actually get a bit more lap time out of it. With iRacing that wasn't so much the case. At low speed it could be very clumsy, very easy to spin up the rear tyres. But through the high speed stuff, the downforce obviously keeps you on the circuit and holds you in place quite nicely. Now it's feeling pretty similar on LMU to the feeling I was getting on iRacing with the previous gen car, which is great. Now, these cars do have some drive range. There is traction control on this Ligier. In fact, I've got traction control on right now, and in real life, the only drive range the car does have, no ABS, no stability control, is actually traction control. Because these cars are also designed for bronze drivers to jump in and have a go, and it kind of acts as a ladder car for moving up through the racing program. It's not a top tier car, if that makes any sense. However, there are still fast drivers that do jump in these and help out their bronze teammates. And there's been no role in the past with LMP3 teams. The fastest drivers actually just turn the traction control completely off. It's quite a basic system, and you can actually go faster with it off. Obviously, it's a little bit harder to drive. So I'm going to turn that off now, and I'll let you know how it changes things. So coming into stall, blocked up a little bit. I'm going to talk about that in a second. I've actually missed the apex, so that's a terrible first example. But I can dump the power on through a high-speed corner, and I'm actually getting no rear end slip. It's completely stable, completely planted. On slow corners, however, if I'm too aggressive with this now, as I come over the curve, out of the clutch chicane, there you go. 2 snaps, controllable, but it's going to eat you up and spin you out very quickly. I do think, though, having done a few laps of this already, that ultimately traction control being turned off is where you're going to get the best out of this car for those that are looking to compete in the higher splits. I don't know if it's going to be faster. We don't have enough time really to do a full speed test at the moment of traction control versus no traction, but it actually feels really good and natural to drive. It's manageable despite being a bit sketchy and, tricky. It's totally manageable. And that's even with this setup. We've got Thrustmaster T818 on the rig at the moment with the hypercar wheel, but the force feedback and stuff has been turned down a little bit. This is a public event. There's kids and people of all ages jumping in these sims, so you can't have the force feedback too low. But even with that, I'm still able to feel the car well. I'm able to catch it when I get those snaps at low speed, unless, I take the mic at the moment. Just look at my lap times there on the steering wheel. I've already managed to do a 155 in this car, which is quicker than I would normally expect to do in a GT3 or in Silverstone. It's actually quicker than I went in the likes of iRacing as well. This car isn't final though. This isn't a final version of it. This isn't a final interior or anything like that. So there will be changes before the actual launch of this DLC. There are a few more things I do want to talk about though from this experience. First of all, the brakes. Now, these cars are known for being difficult under braking. There is no ABS, they're very easy to lock up. You have to brake in a straight line, especially when you're coming into a big braking zone, especially when you're trail braking as well. You've got to be very sensitive. And what I found is when you're hitting the brakes into the club chicane, it's so easy to lock this thing up. You've got to be absolutely arrow straight in the steering. If you do what I did there and just slightly push the brake too hard, it's going to you up as it will under throttle, but it's actually easier to lose it, I think, under braking. So brake bias is going to be an interesting tweak that people are going to make with this car. But obviously with no ABS, it's going to be a challenge for people that maybe normally drive with the security blanket of ABS there. It's going to be hard, but you'll get used to it. What other fun or interesting facts do I have about this car? Well, it's right-hand drive, as are all LMP3 cars, which is a bit weird because most racing cars are left-hand drive. I'm also intrigued to see how it works in terms of multi-class racing, because obviously it sits in between GT3 and LMP2, but in the World Endurance Championship it's GT3 and Hypercar, which are obviously faster still than LMP2, so I think a slower driver in LMP3 is going to be pretty close to a fast driver in a GT3, and that's going to make things very exciting in multi-class. Maybe a right-hand drive car might be more difficult to see as well. So really intrigued to see how that's implemented in the game. Will there be big staggered starts? Will the LMP3s, be playing with some of the GT3? Because I guess it depends on who you're racing against. So that's the car, but what about the track? Well, first of all, you'll notice things like the new hotel at Silverstone. These are all lovely things to see. An updated version of Silverstone with all the current and up-to-date objects and items we can find at the circuit. I believe that actually the track design team are here at the circuit this weekend to take some final photos, make some adjustments to the banners, make some adjustments to the visuals as well. And that really does take me to this. Where are we with Le Mans Ultimate? The version 1.0 release has been pretty well. We've done a review. You can check out the link in the description below to hear my thoughts on it. And as a sim racer, someone who loves hardcore sims with great online racing, I am a massive fan of the game, even though it's still missing some features and there are still flaws in certain areas. There have been improvements since version 1.0 was released, especially with relation to performance, but obviously ELMS content is just another step on that ladder. We know that Le Mans Virtual is returning next year, but we could see qualifiers happening this year if those initial plans are still on track. So that's something to look forward to. Oh yeah. Of course, we've got the rest of the ELMS content as well. But it's all those other little quality of life improvements and gameplay improvements we'd like to see. I did actually ask the Traction community just before coming here what sort of improvements they would like to see. A lot of people were asking for improvements to the wet weather system, improvements to the wet line if realistically it's implemented. But what I would quite like to see more customizable UI, the ability to actually move individual elements. Because lots of other games do that and do that well, and something that I think Le Mans Ultimate is still missing, especially for people that use lots of third-party overlays or make videos, for instance, which is not everyone, but still, it's a nice thing to be able to do. Now that we've got these great fundamentals, we've got more content, we know that career mode's coming, we know that console's coming at some point, it's those little things, it's quality of life improvements, it's tweaks that are going to make this game special over the next year or two.
So I also took the opportunity to drive a few laps in the new ELMS spec unrestricted LMP2 Oreca, and it was as enjoyable as I expected. I always loved the LMP2 on Le Mans Ultimate, but having that extra 60 horsepower does make that little bit of difference on the straight, really pushes you along. The only thing is though, you do have to adjust your braking points and basically recalibrate your brain for the extra power, because you don't have any more downforce or braking ability, and I did find myself missing a couple of my marks, so something to bear in mind.
I hope you've enjoyed the video. Until next time, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.